In September 1962, President John F. Kennedy stood in front of this massive crowd at Rice University and, made a promise that mathematically and technologically he really had absolutely no business making.
Right, the famous moon speech.
Exactly. He just looks at the audience and declares that the United States is going to put a man on the moon before the decade is out. He gave this highly specific timeline, basically like 7 years and a few months, to achieve something that utterly defied the limits of human capability at the time.
Yeah, it was completely unprecedented.
It really was. And I mean, we all know the story, but what almost everyone misses is what happened the year prior and why that hidden context holds the secret to completely rethinking how you set goals in your own life.
It's just a wild piece of history because it flips our conventional wisdom completely upside down. I mean, we are taught from a very young age that goals, whether they're for your career, your business, or your personal life, they just have to be realistic. They need to be attainable, You look at your current baseline, you calculate a reasonable trajectory, and you aim just a few degrees higher.
Yeah, like the classic SMART goals framework. It feels safe, right? It feels logical. But today's deep dive is going to challenge that fundamental assumption entirely.
We really are.
We're pulling from a fascinating stack of source material today, specifically excerpts from a book called The Science of Scaling by Dr. Benjamin Hardy and Blake Erickson. And our mission for you, the listener, is to basically unpack a completely counterintuitive framework for geometric growth.
And we should probably define that right away, geometric growth.
Oh, yeah, good point. So we aren't talking about linear growth here, where like 1 unit of your hard work equals 1 unit of reward. We are talking about geometric growth. So that's exponential compounding scale, where your results completely detached from the raw number of hours you were putting in.
To kind of set the stage for how difficult that transition actually is, we should look at an observation made by Tony Robbins in the foreword of this material.
I found this part so interesting.
Yeah, because he works intimately with some of the most driven, successful people on the planet. And he noted a very specific, almost tragic pattern with them.
What does he see happening?
Well, high achievers naturally start out taking these massive, crazy risks, right? They innovate, they break the rules, they completely defy the odds, but eventually they succeed just enough to get comfortable.
And that comfort basically becomes a trap.
Exactly. It becomes a ceiling. Because once they have something to lose, their whole psychology shifts from scaling to just sustaining.
Wow.
Yeah, they stop compounding their growth and start merely maintaining the empire they've already built. They just start playing defense.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that instinct to play defense is just so universal. You hit a certain level of success, the stakes get higher, and suddenly you just want certainty.
You don't want to rock the boat.
Right. You want perfect, flawless plans before you make a single move. But the core thesis of this material is that true geometric breakthroughs are never born from certainty. They actually require unreasonable goals, artificially urgent timelines, and essentially throwing out the entire safe playbook, which brings us right back to JFK.
Yeah, let's rewind to May 1961. So this is over a year before that famous speech at Rice University. Kennedy goes to Congress, and frankly, he is terrified.
He was dealing with the Cold War, right?
Exactly. The Cold War is escalating rapidly, and the Soviet Union has just successfully put Yuri Gagarin into orbit. So, in Kennedy's mind, the Soviets are winning the space race.
And he's worried about the global optics.
Deeply concerned. He thinks the watching world is going to abandon freedom and embrace tyranny if the U.S. doesn't assert its dominance, immediately. So he proposes this plan to Congress.
And this is the part people completely forget. His plan in 1961 was actually incredibly logical.
It made perfect sense on paper.
Yeah, it was a 7-point, multi-pronged approach to winning this ideological war. He suggested, promoting economic progress at home and abroad, strengthening NATO alliances, increasing military defense, pushing for disarmament.
All very reasonable things.
Right. It was a very sensible, comprehensive list of initiatives. And then right at the very bottom, basically as an afterthought, he added advancing space exploration.
He was totally hedging his bets.
Exactly.
He wasn't fully convinced space was the answer at all. He thought, well, maybe it could garner some global attention, but it was really just one of 7 different paths he was pursuing simultaneously to keep the country safe.
But then you fast forward to September 1962, and that whole multi-pronged approach is just gone. He sets the moon goal. Why did he pivot from 7 sensible goals to one seemingly impossible one?
Because he realized a fundamental truth about strategy and, honestly, about human psychology. Trying to pursue 7 logical, sensible paths was actively diluting the nation's focus.
It was too spread out.
Way too spread out. The authors bring in this brilliant quote from management thinker Peter Drucker here. He said, "Defensive research aimed at perpetuating today predominates."
Perpetuating today, so just keeping things exactly as they are.
Right. In other words, when you have multiple safe, attainable goals, your underlying systems don't have to change at all. You just end up protecting the status quo. JFK realized he couldn't just be a leader anymore. He had to become a disorganizer.
A disorganizer, I love that term.
Yeah, he had to shatter the existing model of incremental progress to force a completely new level of innovation.
You know, let me push back on this a little bit because I think a lot of people listening might feel some friction here.
Sure, go for it.
If I set a goal to make, say, $1 billion by next Tuesday, that doesn't really shatter my existing model and create innovation. It just gives me severe anxiety because it's completely unmoored from reality. Like, where is the line between a clarifying, impossible goal and just being totally delusional?
That is the crucial distinction, absolutely. A delusional goal has no connection to your actual capacity or your genuine desires. It's literally just a random, big number you picked out of thin air. But a properly calibrated, impossible goal is one that is theoretically possible within the laws of physics, but mathematically impossible using your current methods.
Oh, I see.
It's a goal that forces you to realize that just working 10% harder or 20% longer won't actually get you there.
So it's basically a forcing function. It makes you abandon the old system entirely.
Exactly.
Is setting an attainable, multi-pronged goal, basically like trying to clean a completely hoarded house by just rearranging the junk.
That is exactly what it's like.
Right, because you're putting in a ton of effort, you feel incredibly busy organizing these piles of magazines into slightly neater piles, but at the end of the day, you're still sitting in the exact same messy house.
You're organizing the noise rather than eliminating it. And this taps right into the cognitive science behind the source material. A goal is not merely a target you aim at. A goal actually functions as a literal perceptual filter in your brain.
Oh, and like the reticular activating system.
Yes, exactly like that. When you buy a red car, suddenly you see red cars everywhere on the highway.
Yeah, it happens every time.
They were always there, obviously, but your brain was just filtering them out as irrelevant noise. When your goal is small and attainable, your brain assesses your current tools and routines and just says, hey, these are sufficient.
So it doesn't look for anything new.
Right. Your perceptual filter remains wide open, letting in all sorts of distractions, side projects, and minor optimizations just because they don't threaten that small goal.
Right. You can still hit a small goal even if you're distracted.
Exactly. But when you set a massive, seemingly impossible goal, your brain immediately flags your current systems as critically inadequate.
Wow, it creates a state of psychological resource scarcity.
Yes, and that scarcity is what forces the brain into lateral problem solving. It violently narrows your perceptual filter. Suddenly, 100 different tasks on your to-do list become glaringly obvious as a complete waste of time.
You can't afford to do them anymore.
Right. To truly scale, you need a hot knife. You need a goal so massive that it instantly cuts away everything that doesn't matter.
A hot knife. That really paints a very clear picture. And building on how that filtering process works mechanically, the book introduces this 3-part scaling framework.
Which is designed to be that hot knife.
Yes. The 3 parts are frame, floor, and focus. Let me see if I'm tracking with how these fit together. The frame would be the impossible goal itself, right? Like, it dictates the boundaries of what you are even willing to look at.
That's the starting point, yes. Your frame is what you see. If your frame is too low, say aiming for just a 5% increase in sales, you see far too many options.
Because anything could get you 5%.
Exactly. You could run a small ad, you could make a few more cold calls, maybe tweak your website. Everything looks like a viable path.
Yeah.
And that just leads to complexity, exhaustion, and distraction.
Okay, so a massive frame narrows the options. Then the floor must be what you actively filter out. It's the standard you set for what you absolutely will not tolerate or spend time on anymore.
The floor defines your minimum viable engagement.
Minimum viable engagement. I like that.
Yet anything below the floor is just noise. If you engage with things below your floor, you are diluting your power and actively robbing energy from the geometric growth.
And that leaves the focus, which is what you filter for, like the highly specific paths, the new technologies, or the key partnerships you just have to develop because your massive frame requires them.
Right.
It reminds me of putting on a pair of really high-end noise-canceling headphones. Like the frame is the specific symphony you are trying to listen to. The floor is the acoustic technology actively identifying and blocking out the chaotic background chatter of the coffee shop you're sitting in.
That's a great analogy.
And the focus is turning up the volume on the string section, so the music is literally all you experience. But if you drop below the floor, you've essentially taken the headphones off and you're just drowning in the noise again.
It's a perfect mechanism.
Yeah.
And the danger of taking those headphones off, the real danger of attainable goals, is captured perfectly in this quote the authors pull from Elon Musk.
Oh, what did he say?
He said, "The most common mistake of a smart engineer is to optimize a thing that should not exist."
Wow. Optimize a thing that should not exist.
Exactly. Until you establish a seemingly impossible frame, you will spend your most valuable resources optimizing processes that should actually fall below your floor. You're perfecting systems that shouldn't even be happening in the first place.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's ground this abstract theory into reality. Because what does it actually look like for a business to start optimizing what shouldn't exist?
We need a real-world example.
Right. And the authors provide a brilliant case study here with a man named Mark Young. Mark runs a 30-year-old agency called Jeckyll and Hyde Advertising.
They were doing really well, too.
Highly successful. They were generating about $20 million a year in revenue. And their absolute superpower, like the thing they did better than anyone else was getting physical consumer products into massive retail stores like Walmart or Target using traditional heavy-hitting mass media TV campaigns.
But they fell into a psychological trap that catches so many successful companies, right? The fear of being left behind.
Exactly. The digital revolution was happening, and they were terrified. So despite being absolute masters of mass retail, they panicked and completely lowered their floor.
They started taking on these much smaller $4,000 a month clients just to run Amazon ads and basic social media campaigns simply because the market was asking for it.
Even though it wasn't their strength.
No, they totally diluted their identity. They stepped out of their zone of genius and waded right into the crowded, noisy pool of mediocrity.
But then Mark encounters this scaling framework. He looks at his $20 million agency, and he sets a new frame. He sets this impossible goal to hit $100 million in revenue in just 3 years.
A massive jump.
Huge jump. And the moment he established that massive frame, the hot knife came down. He instantly realized his lesser services, the Amazon ads, the social media dabbling, were actively killing his ability to scale.
Because when your goal is $100 million, a $4,000 client is no longer a stepping stone. It is literally an anchor.
It holds you down.
The sheer administrative weight of managing hundreds of tiny clients makes geometric growth completely impossible.
I have to pause here because as a professional, whether you own a business or you're an employee managing projects, isn't it completely terrifying to look at paying clients or established projects and say, hey, I won't take your money anymore, or I'm dropping this? Doesn't that feel like professional suicide?
Oh, absolutely.
You are actively turning down revenue in the short term.
It feels terrifying if your goal is just to sustain your current income. If your goal is safety, then yes, cutting revenue feels like suicide.
Wow.
But remember, Mark's frame was now $100 million.
Right, the new filter.
Exactly. Through that specific lens, the $4,000 client is a legal distraction. So Mark has this defining conversation with one of these clients. It was a company with a makeup cleaning product that was only selling on Amazon.
And what does he tell them?
Mark takes extreme radical accountability. He looks at them and essentially says, I gave you bad advice. We let you play in a little pool. Amazon is a retailer. It is not a business model. If you stay on this path, you will fail in 18 months.
Oof. That is a brutally honest conversation to have with someone who is currently paying you.
It really is. But then he raises the floor on them. He says, if you want to survive and actually scale, you need to bring us $300,000. We are going to put you in mass market retail and blow your brand up on television. Play big or keep grinding it out forever.
And the team at Jeckyll and Hyde was absolutely shocked because this client, who they previously thought was cheap and stingy, actually agreed.
Wait, they agreed?
Yeah, they wired the $300,000 investment.
The client agreed because Mark finally stopped being noise to them. When he was selling $4,000 Amazon ads, he sounded like literally every other agency on earth.
Just another vendor.
Right. But when he demanded $300,000 to dominate retail, he spoke with absolute conviction about his true identity and capacity. This ties into a fantastic quote the authors use from Tim Grover, who is Kobe Bryant's legendary performance coach.
Oh, Grover is intense. What did he say?
Grover points out how average people dabble in a million things. They blog, they teach tennis, they cook sushi. But when you ask Kobe Bryant what he didn't give you a bulleted list of hobbies. He said, I give out numbers. I gave them 81. I gave them a triple-double.
I give out numbers. Wow. He completely owned his specific greatness.
Kobe owned his identity, and Mark finally owned his. When you commit to an impossible goal, you don't have the luxury of dabbling. Mark sold off his distracting side companies, permanently cut his lesser services, and immediately started scaling toward that $100 million mark.
Because he stopped competing in the noise?
Exactly.
Okay, but let's pressure test this a bit. Mark Young had a 30-year-old agency and a $20 million cushion to fall back on when he decided to take that massive risk and fire clients.
That's a fair point.
What if you are starting from zero? You can't just raise prices on clients you don't have or drop projects when you're literally just trying to survive. How does this apply to the pure startup phase?
That is the perfect question, because it reveals that the scaling framework isn't just a pricing strategy. It completely alters the fundamental mechanics of how you work.
Okay.
Let's look at the case study of Alicia Alt. Her story is an absolute masterclass in escaping what we call the linear trap.
Alicia's story is incredible. She spent 20 years grinding it out in the credit repair industry. For a decade of that, she sat on this brilliant idea for a piece of software.
10 years just sitting on it.
Yeah. But finally, she builds it. It's called LevelUp Score. And instead of just disputing negative items on a credit report like every other company out there, her software generated highly customized step-by-step action plans for clients for just $3 an output.
Wow.
It was a total game changer for the industry.
But despite having a revolutionary product, Alicia was stuck. She was completely bogged down in her daily coaching business, running her life, just surviving the day-to-day grind. By 2024, she had exactly 10 clients using her new software.
Just 10 clients after all that work.
Yeah.
So she decides to get serious, and she sets a 90-day goal to get to 100 clients. Now, going from 10 to 100 in 3 months sounds like a very ambitious, solid goal.
It does. It sounds great.
But here is the math of the linear trap. If she just tries to get 100 clients, she is going to use the exact same methods she used to get 10. She's just going to have to cold call 10 times harder, send 10 times as many emails, and work 10 times longer.
Which is the literal definition of linear growth. It demands a proportional increase in your raw energy.
It feels like looking up at a 100-story skyscraper and thinking, well, I got to the second floor by taking the stairs, so to get to the top, I just need to run up the stairs really, really fast.
Yes. You're trying to outrun the architecture, instead of realizing that you need to stop, look around, and figure out how to build an elevator.
Right.
Linear goals don't force us to change our strategy at all. They just demand more of our sweat. When Alicia looked at her goal of 100 clients, she realized it wasn't impossible at all. It just meant she was going to be incredibly busy and miserable.
It made her present reality noisier.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she applied the framework. She changed her goal from 100 clients to 1,000 clients in 90 days.
100x increase in 3 months. That is wild.
The moment she set that impossible target, her brain recognized that cold calling was mathematically impossible.
Running up the stairs was no longer an option.
Right. The resource scarcity we talked about earlier kicked in. This massive frame forced a completely new focus. Instead of asking, how do I make more calls, she had to ask a lateral question.
Which was?
She asked, why aren't you calling software companies that are already marketing to your target audience? She looked for the elevator. She realized there were companies out there who had already done the hard work of aggregating thousands of her ideal users.
Exactly.
Of course, her immediate reaction was fear. She thought, they're too big, they won't talk to a startup with 10 clients, but the massive goal left her absolutely no other choice.
She had to try it.
Right. So she pushes through the fear, she gets connected to the owner of a company called Credit Repair Junkies, and she doesn't pitch her software as a competitor. She pitches it as an integration to make his software vastly better.
And the result is the absolute definition of geometric growth. In a single conversation, through a single partner, she went from 10 clients to over 8,000 clients.
8,000 from one conversation.
Impossible goals force you to stop looking for incremental customers and start looking for exponential partners. Pathways that yield 100x to a 10,000x return for the exact same amount of input energy.
It is truly mind-blowing when you see the math actually play out like that. It completely demystifies the whole idea of an overnight success. It really does. It's just a different formula entirely.
So what does this all mean for you as you go back to your desk or your business or your life today? If you feel stuck or if you feel incredibly busy but you aren't actually progressing, the message from the source material is clear. You cannot scale a complex, contradicting system.
You just can't.
If you want to experience geometric growth, you have to stop lying to yourself about what is actually working. You have to stop being the leader with 1,000 little helpers, just micromanaging the noise.
That's the trap.
Right. You need to set a frame so massive, so audacious, that it forces your brain to abandon its old methods. And then you have to relentlessly, ruthlessly cut out the floor, all the tasks, the minor clients, the comfortable habits you honestly shouldn't be doing anyway.
It really requires shifting your entire paradigm of how progress works. The authors reference the visionary systems theorist Buckminster Fuller here, who famously said, "You never change things by fighting the existing reality."
Then how do you change them?
He said, to change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete.
That is so good.
Setting an impossible goal is the forcing function that makes you build that new model. So I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on today. We want you to take a hard look at your typical Tuesday. Look at the tasks, the recurring meetings, the obligations filling your calendar right now.
The things you just do automatically.
Yeah. If someone told you that you only had 6 months to achieve your ultimate 10-year goal, what is the very first thing on your to-do list today that you would have to immediately stop doing?
Wow, that is a question that should keep you up at night in the absolute best way possible. Stop settling for the comfort of realistic goals. Elevate your frame, raise your floor, and scale your impact. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.